Kody is a failure in not making those marriages work.
I feel like we're all failures, not just Kody. I think that's funny because it takes two to make a relationship and it takes two to break a relationship. See, that's just, I feel like, another button to push. And I'm just like, hey, why? That doesn't need to be said. And, things that he's saying, like, that doesn't need to be said. I'm like, just, guys, can you just stop? Like, this is so destructive.
Hey besties, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. While Kody and Robyn are on the tell-all for Sister Wives, lying out their booties about what happened on the season and with all of these relationships, we know that the truth is not what they say, right? And Kody has this cameo, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but he gets paid to talk to people and give them advice. And generally, what Cody's advice is to people is rambling about his life. And oftentimes he's supposed to be giving them advice on birthdays or, congratulations or honeymoons or whatever. And he makes every single cameo about him. And recently he was asked to congratulate this couple that was about to go on their honeymoon and maybe give some advice about, their marriage. And Kody, oh my gosh. So on the show for years, they all never talked about sex, right? They never talked about the intimacy between anyone because apparently it made everyone uncomfortable and they didn't want to know what was going on in each other's bedrooms. And I always said that if people are okay in being a plural relationship, if you are truly okay with being in that kind of relationship, theoretically you should not be jealous because you're consenting and you accept, right? But if you're not okay with it, it's usually a red flag that your body is telling you that something is wrong, right? And I would say that jealousy is a pretty normal human emotion. And I think that while there's a lot of people that think that this kind of polygamy where it's around this belief system and in these cults is somehow consensual. I don't believe it is. You'll never make me believe it is. It's a lot of coercion and control and fear. And it's a whole system set up to basically make women chattel and property. And I think that was evidenced by Kody basically talking about how he had no respect for some of his wives recently on the tell-alls. But a couple years ago, I think I told you about how there was a story that one of Kody's friends relayed to me about how they were out to lunch with Kody. And during the conversation at lunch, Kody was going on and on and on about how good getting down and dirty was with Robyn and how he couldn't get enough of it. And it was all he wanted. He was like wanting it the way that people who have substance use disorders want their substance. He was a fiend. And in a recent video that he made for somebody random on the internet who watches Sister Wives, Kody went into detail about his honeymoon with Robyn, and it was so cringe and so disgusting. Check it out.
Robyn and I didn't have any money on our honeymoon, and fortunately I had a credit that took care of our lodging and a $500 credit card that pretty much was all we had. She's complaining to me that I was starving her because I had brought a whole bunch of nuts and seeds and fruit, dried fruit. That's kind of how I travel. And that's what we were eating. And we were on honeymoon. And we were chaste, non-sexual prior to the honeymoon. And so it was the new land of discovery. And she was frustrated that I was starving her to death. So I'm sure your situation is so vastly different from that. I'd love to give you more history on the entire experience. This is about you guys. What was fortunate about it is we just got lost in each other. And it was a weird thing that other than needing food and a ticket into amusement park at Disneyland, we just got lost in each other. And that was absolutely precious experience. When you're on your honeymoon, you've got to make it about each other. A place of discovery, a place of learning and understanding and sharing, of giving and taking and sharing and receiving. I mean, it can be so absolutely beautiful. So give yourself the time. If you're going to another country, you're probably going to be touring a lot, but take the time with each other to connect deeply. My courtship.
I think it's funny because, first of all, he says that they didn't have money and that they kind of filmed part of it, but then they only had a credit card for $500 and they had a credit for lodging, i.e., TLC paid for them to stay in a hotel, and they had a per diem card that they were given for eating on a daily basis by TLC. And so he didn't pay at all for his honeymoon. It was filmed. They went out for dinner. They went to parks, more than just Disney World. But then he said that they had to get away and they lost each other in themselves. And, that's just a chunk of it, of him talking about the giving and the receiving and getting to know each other's beautiful experiences. And, it was their first dip in their toes of having intimacy. I don't believe that, by the way. You'll never make me believe that the honeymoon was the first time they ever did it. And can you imagine getting a cameo from Kody Brown and he is giving you innuendo about the amazing sex that Robyn and he had on their San Diego honeymoon in California, where they were gone for 11 days. And now we know why it was 11 days, because apparently for a couple of the days they filmed and the other 9, all they did was stay in their hotel room and front hugged, Mormon fundamentalist style, on the bed. I wonder if they wore their garments. Sometimes they do that, but giving and receiving and exploring and yes, Kody and Robyn, all they did on their honeymoon, apparently, outside of those few times they filmed, was have sex. I always said that Kody was such a pervert, and I always knew he was, because I think about this a lot now that I'm covering this case with Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. If I didn't cover these stories, I would literally never speak about these kinds of topics, because why would you speak about these kind of topics? I don't care about Kody's sex life. It's just gross. Why would I think about him in a bedroom with Robyn? I mean, do you think once they got rich, they just started laying out $100 bills on the bed and rolling around and exploring and giving and receiving? Kody was asked to give a cameo about a honeymoon. And Kody's idea of a honeymoon is sex. That's what he thinks of his honeymoon. I'm just going to have as much sex as possible. I'm going to lie in a bedroom all day long. But more importantly, it's like he wants these people to know that he and Robyn had a lot of sex. Why do you need to share that with some rando that's having their honeymoon? Do you think they really want to go into their honeymoon now thinking about Kody and Robyn having sex? And if you're Robyn, how do you feel about your husband telling everyone that all you did on your honeymoon was have sex? It's kind of like when he was talking about the divorce with Mary, and he was making a comment about how they probably went home and made love after she signed the divorce documents. And on the tell-all, Mary just said that they never spoke about that publicly because it was an agreement that they just wouldn't. They didn't want it to be like that because obviously there's already that stigma about polygamous men being creepy. And then so he makes that comment. It's like the very first time really he speaks about it in a way like that on the show. And then now that he has opened that door, apparently it's all Kody wants to talk about. I mean, he's so gross. Somebody paid $150 for him to talk about how much sex he had with Robyn on their honeymoon.
I'm a lack of words sometimes. Let me explain. Moms get a chemical dumped into them. I'm going to call it God's magic. And this chemical makes you fall in love with your children in a way that is irreconcilable when your children are born. And it makes you love unconditionally forever. And I'm jealous because it makes you, dads have to do the tough love stuff a lot of times. Half the time I'm just overindulgent anyway. But moms empathize. They sympathize. They care. They're loving. They're understanding. And they listen instead of trying to fix the problem like dads do. And this gift that you...
So once Kody was done talking about starving his wife, Robyn, his mistress, Robyn, through all of their front hugging Mormon style on the bed, he then was doing Mother's Day cameos. And in two of them, he made this comment, which I thought was interesting. And it reminded me of something he said in the tell all, where he said that every single person gives you something different and they fulfill a need in you, or they give you something, or they add something to you, and you have different relationships with everybody, which is true. But at the same time, I think Kody views relationships very transactionally, like what they give to him, not necessarily like the back and forth that exists between the two of them. And he used to say that he didn't need one wife to fulfill a need in him. He used to always say that they all were a whole person and the relationships were whole, all of them. And they didn't fulfill a need in one and then another one and another one. It wasn't like they were compartmentalized as like Robyn was the sex wife and this one was the cooking wife and this one was the working wife or whatever. This is the head wife. He always said that they were all whole. So now we know that Robyn was a sex life, but then also he has a very sexist view about women, right? He said that Christine made him a meal and he couldn't be happy because she was always complaining about how she was unhappy. And then in these cameos, he's talking about mothers. And he has this idea, this concept that the reason why women have unconditional love for their kids is because when they have the baby or they give birth, which this would only be for a woman that gives birth, by the way. There's plenty of mothers that adopt children that can love their kids unconditionally. And there are also plenty of women that have children that don't love their children unconditionally. But he says that when you have your child, your body releases oxytocin and it makes you bond with your child. And I'm sure there's some truth to this, but he equates the release of the oxytocin to a mom being able to love a child and be empathetic and be understanding and be patient and love them unconditionally to childbirth and the release of oxytocin. And then he says he's jealous of mothers because they can love unconditionally. And then he explains away his bad parenting because he says that he has to be the guy that is the bad cop, that he's putting them in their place. He's firm with them. He's always having to run defense, He's the one that has to put them in line, which is, again, a very sexist view on parenting. It's this old concept that men are detached from their kids and that their children are bonded unconditionally with their mothers, which true. It's true. Like women do have relationships with their children that are likely very different than men. But to say that men cannot love their children unconditionally, I think that is so unfair to men. And if this is how he views his children, no wonder half of them want nothing to do with him. If his view of parenting is that he just shows up to correct them or to discipline them, you know what I mean? Or to scold them, what kind of parent is that? You're missing out on all the good stuff, right? And he acts like the wives that are not being the ones to hold them accountable. And I'll tell you a secret. My husband is the softie of me and him when it comes to my son. And I'm a huge softie with my son. But if we're trying to get our kid to do something, my son knows how to push daddy's buttons to like not get daddy to make him do it. You know what I mean? Like if it's like you got to do your homework, he can whittle his way with daddy and he can get his way out of it. But when it comes to me, like he won't. We hold firm. He knows to listen to mommy. He's going to get his homework done. And I'm not a mean mom by any means. We don't spank. He doesn't get timeouts. He doesn't get grounded. You know what I mean? Like dads can be softies and love unconditionally and sacrifice and literally love their child more than they love themselves. That's possible. But the way that Kody views kids and women is so weird to me. If he is this detached and he thinks that only women are capable of loving unconditionally, what does that say for men? Does that mean that his sons then are going to go on to be fathers that don't know how to love unconditionally? Does this mean that he doesn't love Aurora and Brianna and Dayton and Solomon and Ariella unconditionally? Does it mean that if they do something that upsets him, he will then unlove them? Is that what it means? Because a child's place in the world, their one way to form good relationships in life is by having parents that model behavior to them that's safe and that you don't leave them scarred and wounded. And a lot of us grew up with parents that left us scarred and wounded. And it would appear that Kody continues this with his current children that he's living with because he didn't say that he can love his current kids, like the little ones, unconditionally. What an empty vessel of just gross nothingness. It must be utterly exhausting to be around this man. And Robyn must really like the money so much so that she's okay with her husband speaking about starving her on her honeymoon because of all of the sex they had, and then making comments about how women can love unconditionally, but he can't. So, newsflash for Robyn: once you wear out your welcome and you don't give him what he wants and you don't bend to his needs and you stop giving him all the sex, you're going to become as uninteresting to him as all the other women. And once your children start having opinions that he can't control, they will get discarded just like the others. And there is a reason why their oldest son, Dayton, is not on the show. And it's because Kody and him do not get along. But they won't tell you that. They won't tell you that Kody mistreats a child and a young adult with autism poorly. They'll never tell you that. He's just a creep. And these cameos are the real Kody, not the one that you see on TV. So, what are your thoughts about these creepy comments that Kody made about his wife, Robyn, about children, about sex? Is he as gross as I think he is? Tell me in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.